This is my ranking of real-time war games that I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each one is placed from masterpiece down to trash, depending on how strong the large-scale battles feel, how well strategy and unit control are balanced, and how effectively each game captures the intensity of real-time warfare. Let's get straight into the list. Wargame Red Dragon threw me into battles where every mistake could destroy an entire push within seconds. I spent most matches scouting forests, watching roads, and trying to predict enemy movement before missiles started flying across the map. The scale of the combat felt huge, especially when tanks, helicopters, artillery, and jets attacked at the same time. I liked how dangerous every unit felt, because even expensive vehicles could disappear after one bad decision. The naval combat looked amazing, but some battles felt awkward compared to the land warfare. Multiplayer matches created the best moments since human players forced me to think carefully instead of rushing forward blindly. I also enjoyed building custom army decks and testing different strategies against stronger opponents during long matches online across several chaotic maps. This stays in my great tier. Steel Division 2 dropped me into Eastern Front battles, where every hill, forest, and village could turn into a disaster within minutes. I spent a lot of time building defensive lines, protecting artillery, and trying to stop enemy tanks before they smashed through my positions. The battles felt tense because strong units could still collapse if I attacked too early or ignored a weak flank. I liked experimenting with different divisions since each army forced me to play in completely different ways. The breakthrough mode created some of my favorite matches because defending territory felt chaotic at the same time. The Army General campaign sounded interesting, but the pacing and confusing systems slowed things down more than I expected. Even with those issues, the tactical combat stayed exciting during multiplayer sessions. This belongs in good tier. Call to Arms Gates of Hell Ostfront brought back the classic Men of War style where every soldier, tank, and artillery strike could completely change a battle within seconds. I spent most missions slowly pushing through villages, setting ambushes, and trying not to lose important troops during messy firefights. The detailed combat kept me interested because damaged tanks, dead crews, and destroyed buildings made battles feel harsh and unpredictable. Some stealth missions became annoying after repeated failures, especially when enemy mortars wiped out half my squad without warning. The single-player campaign also felt repetitive after several hours since many objectives followed the same structure again and again. Multiplayer cooperative matches completely changed my opinion because working with friends created far more exciting and memorable battles across larger maps during matches. This enters my excellent tier. Command Modern Operations dropped me into massive military scenarios where I spent more time planning attacks and tracking radar contacts than actually firing weapons. I liked studying maps, checking terrain, and coordinating aircraft, ships, and submarines across huge battle zones covering entire regions. The simulation felt extremely detailed because small mistakes in positioning or timing could completely ruin an operation within minutes. I also enjoyed how the interface improvements made complicated battles easier to follow during chaotic situations involving dozens of units moving at once. Some systems still felt difficult to learn, and a few strange AI issues occasionally interrupted the flow of longer missions. Even then, the scale and realism kept battles tense while letting me experiment with different military strategies across land, sea, and air operations. This earns a place in my excellent tier. Broken Arrow is a modern battlefield chaos where drones, missiles, tanks, and helicopters were attacking at the same time across huge maps. I spent most battles trying to manage supplies, protect vulnerable units, and position infantry carefully before enemy armor rolled forward. I liked how detailed the combat felt because damaged vehicles could still survive while losing important parts during firefights. The deck building system also kept matches interesting since I could customize units and experiment with different military setups before every battle. Some missing features, especially the lack of smaller multiplayer options and proper solo skirmishes, became frustrating after several hours. Even then, The scale of the warfare and the constant tactical decisions kept me interested through long multiplayer sessions against skilled players online without feeling repetitive or shallow. This belongs in my good tier. Master of Command put me into chaotic 7 years war battles, where careful positioning mattered more than charging straight into enemy lines. I spent most fights managing infantry formations, timing volleys, and trying to break enemy morale before my own soldiers started retreating across the battlefield. I liked how units reacted during combat because cavalry charges, artillery fire, and collapsing battle lines created constant pressure during every engagement. The campaign structure also stayed interesting since different factions changed how I approached battles and managed resources between missions. Watching smoke cover the battlefield while armies marched through towns and forests looked surprisingly beautiful for a smaller strategy game. The AI became smarter during longer campaigns, forcing me to rethink defensive positions instead of relying on the same tactics repeatedly during battles. This easily reaches my masterpiece tier. Combat Mission Shock Force 2 placed me into slow, methodical battles where every street, rooftop, and open field could turn deadly within seconds. I spent most missions moving infantry carefully, checking firing angles and calling artillery support before pushing armored vehicles toward enemy positions. The realistic pacing made firefights feel tense because rushing forward usually ended with destroyed squads and burning tanks scattered across the map. I liked switching between real-time and turn-based modes depending on how chaotic the battlefield became during larger operations. The amount of units, campaigns, and different NATO forces also kept battles varied across many hours of play. The visuals looked dated compared to newer strategy games, but the detailed combat systems carried the experience easily. I kept returning because the battle demanded patience and planning. This settles nicely into my great tier. WARNO dropped me into massive Cold War battles where every hill, forest, and road became important once tanks and helicopters started moving across the map. I spent most matches scouting enemy positions, protecting supply lines, and setting traps before pushing armored units toward key objectives. The combat felt intense because careless attacks usually ended with destroyed convoys and entire flanks collapsing within minutes. I liked how different NATO and Warsaw Pact armies forced me to change tactics instead of repeating the same strategy every battle. The tutorials were demanding at first, but learning camouflage, positioning, and artillery coordination made victories far more satisfying later on. Larger multiplayer matches created incredible moments where several attacks happened simultaneously across huge battlefields filled with chaos and constant pressure without feeling repetitive. This earns a spot in my excellent tier. Graviteam Tactics Mius-Front threw me into brutal Eastern Front battles where confusion, smoke, and collapsing defenses constantly changed my plans. I spent most operations carefully moving infantry through forests, protecting tanks from hidden anti-tank guns, and trying to keep exhausted units from getting surrounded. The physics and destruction looked incredible because damaged vehicles could slide into trenches, burn for minutes, or explode long after fighting stopped. I also liked how unpredictable the campaigns became since counterattacks could appear from unexpected directions during longer operations. The interface and tutorials were difficult to understand at first, and learning artillery systems took serious patience before everything finally started making sense. Even with that steep learning curve, the atmosphere and scale of the combat created unforgettable battles that stayed intense for hours during massive campaigns. This belongs in my excellent tier. Syrian Warfare focused on brutal modern battles where careful positioning and constant attention mattered more than rushing units across the battlefield. I spent most missions protecting armored vehicles, clearing hostile buildings, and trying to keep infantry alive during overwhelming enemy attacks. The combat felt tense because artillery strikes, hidden ambushes, and limited reinforcements could quickly destroy an entire operation after one mistake. I liked how realistic the firefights looked, especially during urban battles filled with explosions, damaged tanks, and collapsing defenses. The campaign itself carried heavy political messaging that became difficult to ignore after several missions, especially during cutscenes between battles. Even with that problem, the tactical gameplay stayed challenging and rewarding enough to keep battles interesting across the campaign without becoming repetitive during extended battles. The difficult missions and strategic pacing place this in the good tier. Men of War Assault Squad 2 quickly became a brutal strategy game where every mistake could wipe out an entire push within moments during larger battles. I spent most missions managing ammunition, repairing damaged vehicles, and trying to keep infantry alive during chaotic firefights across ruined villages and open roads. The direct control feature became my favorite mechanic because controlling individual soldiers made desperate defenses and risky assaults feel far more intense. I also liked how detailed the combat systems felt since troops carried supplies, weapons, and equipment that actually mattered during longer operations. The learning curve felt punishing at first, and multiplayer battles punished careless decisions almost immediately against experienced opponents online. Even then, the depth of the gameplay and unpredictable combat kept me returning repeatedly afterward. This stays within my great tier. Regiments delivered large Cold War battles that felt easier to control without losing the tension and scale found in more demanding strategy games. I spent most operations defending towns, coordinating tanks with infantry, and pushing toward capture points while enemy artillery constantly struck my positions. The slower pacing helped a lot because I could pause battles, rethink plans, and avoid the overwhelming chaos found in similar real-time war games. I also liked how the phased operations changed the battlefield over time since damaged units, shifting objectives, and reinforcements kept every mission feeling different. The AI created difficult fights by launching flanking attacks, artillery bombardments, and sudden counterattacks against weaker positions across the map. Even without multiplayer support, the tactical gameplay stayed satisfying through repeated campaigns and skirmish battles afterward. This belongs in my great tier. Sea-power naval combat in the Missile Age created massive naval confrontations where careful radar management and missile timing mattered more than rushing directly toward enemy fleets. I spent most operations tracking suspicious contacts, launching aircraft patrols, and trying to identify hostile ships before wasting valuable weapons during tense encounters. The large-scale warfare stayed exciting, because submarines, bombers, destroyers, and carriers could all clash across huge stretches of ocean during major battles. I liked experimenting with different naval tactics, especially electronic warfare and coordinated missile strikes against heavily defended enemy groups far from shore. The AI occasionally acted strangely during longer scenarios, and managing every system became difficult once battles turned chaotic. Even with those problems, the atmosphere and detailed Cold War naval combat kept me interested throughout extended campaign missions. This belongs in the good tier. That's my ranking of the real-time war games. Large-scale battles and tense tactical moments made several of these highly memorable, while others lost momentum once the pacing started slowing down. Thanks for watching.